All right, so when we left off, we were talking about muscle memory as part of our physical abilities to be able to do complex motor skills and things like that. We're going to finish talking about different types of long-term memory. The next type of long-term memory is a part of your episodic memory. So again, it's part of the your biography, things that have happened to you or something like that. And those are what we call flashbulb memories. Now, a flashbulb memory gets its name from if you've ever had a picture taken with a very, very powerful flash, and it just kind of like freezes everything as it burns into your retina. Well, a flashbulb memory does the same thing, but it burns onto your memory. And it's something that you will never, ever, ever, ever forget. And you can remember very vividly when you close your eyes. Typically, it's what were you doing when kind of a thing. It can usually involve something that is either extremely stressful or extremely emotional. And it can be a collective moment. For my generation, we can talk to each other in terms of what were you doing when you heard about the September 11th attack. For my parents' generation, it was where were you when you heard about JFK's assassination. For my grandparents, it's where were you when you heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor. It's that kind of a collective moment that everybody kind of stands still for just a couple of minutes as everything just kind of goes into chaos all around us. We also can have individual or personal flashbulb memories. For example, I can remember very vividly the day that my daughter was born. I can remember the day of my wedding. I can remember the day I met my wife for the very first time. I remember all of these things extremely vividly. Okay. The one that I'm going to talk about to kind of show you what a flashbulb memory kind of seems like is my memory of the attack on September 11th. Now, I was a junior at the University of Oregon, so I was in college at the time. I had just moved off campus, so I wasn't living in the dorms anymore. I had just moved down to Eugene, a couple of days before. So I was, my stuff was still in boxes. It was still, chaos. Of course, most of my stuff stayed in boxes because I just never unpacked. And that's a whole other story. Anyway, but I was living in this house on the end of a dirt road in the next town over from Eugene called Springfield. And I was living in Springfield, and I remember when I woke up that morning, I had to get to campus that day because it was the first day that I had to be there for marching band because, yes, I am that cool. I was in the marching band in college. Anyway, I remember I got up that morning, and I had to get to campus, and I came out of my room, and I went into the living room where the TV was. And one of my other housemates, one of the other people who lived at the house with me, he was finishing his breakfast and watching TV. But I walk in the door and he basically turned the TV off because he was getting up to leave. He worked at Costco and he didn't have a car, so he had to bike his happy ass to Costco, which was kind of a long way, but whatever. But I remember he turned the TV off and he's like, "Oh my God, did you hear the news?" And I was like, "No, I didn't hear any news. What happened?" And he's like, "Michael Jordan's coming back to basketball." And I'm like, "Okay, I don't really care, but all right, that's interesting, I guess." And he's like, "Yeah, and they grounded all air traffic. Anyway, I got to go." And he got on his little bike and started pedaling his happy ass to Costco. And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, they grounded all air traffic because Michael Jordan's coming back to basketball? That doesn't make any sense. He can't jump that high. I mean, That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So I went into the kitchen so that I could make my breakfast, so that I could finish getting ready and I could go to campus. And I had put a TV in the kitchen so that I could, watch TV in the kitchen because I was a sophisticated adult now. Just kidding. I mean, I was a sophisticated adult, but that's not what shows it. But the TV was one of these old tube TVs, so it took a long time for it to kind of warm up so that you could actually see what was on the screen. And I remember I had put my bagel into the toaster because I had gotten cinnamon raisin bagels because those are delicious and I like myself. And I put it into the toaster, and just as the TV had warmed up, and they were, it was on the news because literally every channel was showing the news. QVC showing the news, ESPN showing the news, MTV showing the news. Everything was news. There was nothing else going on. There were no commercials. It was just news constantly. And I remember watching, the thing come up, and they were re-showing the planes flying into the buildings. And I remember looking at it and going, wow, that is going to be a hell of a movie. But I haven't heard about any movie about, an attack in New York. That's pretty crazy. And then slowly I began to realize, oh, this isn't a movie. This is actually happening. And my expression went from, oh, really cool, to, oh my God, this is crazy. I remember I'm standing there in the kitchen trying to figure out what I should do. And I'm like, well, I should wake up the other people in the house and tell them what happened, because I was the only other person awake. So I went to the room of one of the other people that I knew, and I woke him up, and I'm like, dude, you got to turn on the TV. There was a terrorist attack. Oh my God, what channel is it on? I said, all of them. Just any channel. Any channel is good. And he turned on the TV and he started watching, and I watched with him for a couple of minutes as he was asking me questions, and I'm like, I don't know. Nobody knows. I don't know. Nobody has a clue what the hell's going on. And then I said, well, I've got to finish getting ready. I've got to go to campus. And so I got my stuff ready and started out the door. And I remember I got to the car, because I had a car, because I wasn't a loser. Riding my happy ass to freaking Costco. But I got to my car and I put my hand on the car door, and my phone started ringing. And it was my mother. And I remember her, kind of in a panic going, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I don't live in New York City, remember? I live in Eugene, Oregon. There are basically no chances that we are going to be attacked by terrorists today. I mean, you got to get through a lot of other places first before you get to Eugene, Oregon. Okay? The tallest building in town is a retirement home. Okay? So let's just relax. We're fine. Okay, I just wanted to make sure you're okay. Yeah. I actually have to get to campus. I got a thing I got to be at in a couple of minutes. So yeah. Okay, well, be careful. Yes, mother. Hang up the phone. Almost immediately, phone rings again. This time it's my sister. I have one older sister. She's about 3.5 years older than I am. And I remember I picked up the phone and she's crying. And I'm like, what, hello? I just wanted to know if you were okay. Katie, I live in Eugene, Oregon, not New York City. No one I know lives in New York City. No one you know lives in New York City. No one I know lives in Washington, D.C. No one you know lives in Washington, D.C. Everybody that we know is fine. They're safe. Everything's okay. Oh, I just want to tell you that I love Katie. Stop. Let's not say something that we're going to regret later. Okay? Everybody's fine. We're going to get through this. You're going to be okay. She's a little, I don't want to say she's an emotional person, but she's far more emotional than I am. I'm pretty good at being able to divorce the moment from, my emotional state. My sister has never been good at that. But yeah, she was just a mess. And I remember she, hung up the phone, and I got in the car, and I, drove to campus, listening to the news on the radio. And I remember, getting to campus, and just everything was kind of in a daze. It was just kind of a haze of, I have no idea what's going on right now. I don't know what's happening. And everybody was in that same daze. It was just really, really difficult to put into words what was happening, and to also, do anything without thinking about what was going on. And yeah, it was a really, really stressful day. It was a really emotional day. I remember sitting in the cab of the rental truck that we rented to haul around our instruments, because I got to drive the truck because I'm cool like that. And I remember sitting in the cab of that truck at lunchtime, listening to the radio, trying to get any kind of information as to who did this and why they did it, and what were they hoping to get out of it. It's also trying to figure out what the hell is our response to this going to be, because that was up in the air. Nobody had a clue what was going on. And I remember it very, 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 very vividly. Now, again, a flashbulb memory can be some kind of, I don't want to say solidifying event in our collective lives, but it can be one of those times where it's everybody remembers where they were when. Okay, for people in Los Angeles who went through the Northridge quake, they will definitely remember where they were and when they were woken up in the middle of the night from an earthquake that was stronger than anything they had ever felt before. You will have flashbulb memories, coming up in your life, the day you met your significant other, whoever they happen to be, the day that you got married, the day you have your first child, or all of your children. All of those memories basically get seared into your brain to be permanently remembered there. I can still remember holding my daughter for the very first time after her birth, and just being scared to death. And being scared to death and worried that, wow, I am really going to mess this kid's life up like a lot. It's not going to be funny. This is going to be bad. Still haven't yet, but, give it some time. She's only 3. Almost 4. Good God, she's almost 4. Anyway, the fact is, flashbulb memories are something that we all go through and we all experience, and it's something that we have to try to that we will remember, and we'll remember for the rest of our lives. Again, part of that episodic part of your long-term memory. On Thursday, hopefully you all had the opportunity to watch that short video about eyewitness testimony and eyewitness statements. Basically, the main takeaways from the video are that your memory is not like a camera. Eyewitness testimony can be extremely flawed, and it has actually been used to put people in prison for crimes they did not commit. Kind of one of the main reasons why I oppose the death penalty, because if an eyewitness can get it wrong and they go to the chair and we execute them, and then we find out, no, actually it wasn't them, then we collectively murdered someone. I don't like that. So kind of why I don't like that. You can also get people to change their testimony by planting little ideas. And we talked a little bit about that before the video started on Thursday. So hopefully you kind of have finished that. If you have not yet finished it, get it done. I don't know what you're waiting for. I gave you 2 different ways of being able to do it. Pick one. You don't have to do them both. Just do one. I don't care. Pick one. One of the things that we do need to talk about is how our long-term memories get organized. Okay, our brain organizes the information that we store in long-term memory along what we call conceptual frameworks, or a schema. These schemas help us to make sense of the world quickly and efficiently. Okay, it's basically a set of expectations. Now, we all have our own personal schema for everything that we've ever encountered. Okay, we have a schema that it fits into, and things that don't fit into the schema tend to get thrown out. We tend to forget those things first. Okay, so for example, if we take a look at this guy right here who's dressed up as a soldier, if you were to sit there and actually think about what your schema of soldier is, okay, what is your schema of soldier? It would probably involve a lot of different expectations and ideas and things like that, okay? And all of that is stored in your brain. If you think about your long-term memory like it's a really big filing cabinet that you can reach back into, when you reach into your long-term memory to find something, you usually don't just pull out that one piece of information that you need. You're usually pulling out a clump of information. So here's all of the information that I've got about soldiers, and you might have personal experience with soldiers, or maybe you have a negative experience with a soldier, and that's put in there too. And so seeing a picture of that might be putting you a little bit at oh, I don't think I like this middle-aged white guy holding an assault rifle. I don't think I like this. I don't like this guy. Okay, you might be getting those feelings. That is your schema. Okay, your schema is basically going through everything that it has in your short-term memory, revolving around middle-aged white dude in camo. All right, so it is giving you those expectations. This person might be the nicest person you've ever met, but you don't know that because your schema is going to take that information and immediately throw it out. So if you were to actually meet him and find out, yeah, he's a really nice guy, if you have bad experiences with people dressed up in fatigues, you're going to forget that. That will get thrown out. Okay? It doesn't match up to your set of expectations. This is the birthing point of stereotypes. And we all have them. We all have them because that's how our memory functions. It doesn't make us necessarily racist to have those schemas and those expectations. When we act upon them in a negative way, and we don't try to actively work against them, then yes, it can be very negative to have stereotypes. But a stereotype makes it so that we don't have to get to know every single detail about a person before we move on to the next person. We'd never get anywhere. Okay. Now, you probably had a schema about people who looked like me on the very first day of class. You turned on the Google Meet and you're like, I don't know who this Mr. Mac guy is, but all right, let's see. And when you saw my fat face, you probably thought, oh God, I got another one of these people. This class is going to be boring. Hopefully it hasn't been. But if it hasn't been, in a few years' time, you might completely forget about this situation, this entire class. You might forget about this. I remember having a lot of fun in psychology class, but I don't remember a lot about it because it goes against your schema. Middle-aged, overweight, fat guys, obviously they're boring. Okay. So I shouldn't really be paying attention to them, but you did anyway, and I'm glad you're here. Anyway, when things don't match up with our schema, we tend to forget them. Okay. So let's talk about remembering. Okay. We talked about storage. We talked about encoding. Let's talk about the retrieval process. Okay. There are two main types of retrieving information out of our brain. One is through what we call retrieval, which is where you reach in and you pull out that piece of information that you're looking for. Okay. And again, usually it comes with a whole bunch of other stuff. Then there's also recognition, where your brain has the opportunity to simply recognize things that you remember. Okay, so it's listed there. So think about it like retrieval is a fill in the blank question. You've got to know the information, so you have to reach into your memory and pull it out. But a multiple choice, you only have to recognize the correct answer. So can you recognize the correct answer? So I'm going to do a little exercise, a little example of this. What I want you to do right now, okay, we got a picture of Snow White. I want you to think of all of the 7 dwarves' names. How many of them can you remember? Now, do not put the names of the all of the dwarves in the chat window. I just want you to tell me how many of the names you can remember. Okay, I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that while I respond to this. Yeah, you only had to do one of the 2. They're both the same assignment. Just do one of the 2. It was just people are having problems, so here's another way to get it. So if you're having a problem this way, try this way. If this way you don't like this way, try this way. 2 different ways, same thing. It is what it is. You got to watch the video twice, and now you really know a lot about eyewitness testimony. It's okay. I'm sorry I didn't make that clear enough. I'll try to make it clear next time. Hopefully next time we don't have to worry about this at all. Hopefully. Anyway, how many of the dwarves' names can you remember? There are 7. How many can you remember? Just give me the number in the chat window. Four, 2, 3. One or none, because it might be wrong. Okay. 0, 2. Okay, so looks like 4 is kind of the high water mark. Okay, that's reaching into your brain and trying to remember. Okay, it's not a great way of remembering things. So let me put up all of the names of the dwarves. Okay, I'm going to put them up on the screen. What I want you to do is I want you to see if you can recognize the 7 names. Okay, here are the names. Tubby, grouchy, gabby, fearful, sleepy, smiley, jumpy, hopeful, shy, droopy, dopey, sniffy, wishful, puffy, dumpy, sneezy, lazy, pop, grumpy, bashful, cheerful, shorty, nifty, happy, doc, and wheezy. Okay, how many names can you remember now? Okay, you got all 7. Okay. Okay, so now 3 is kind of the minimum that we're remembering, and now we can remember all the way up to 7. Okay, For those of you who don't have to read Snow White to your 3-year-old daughter every night before that she goes to bed, they are, let's see, sleepy, dopey, sneezy, grumpy, bashful, happy, and Doc. Those are the 7 dwarfs. Okay. Now, if I were to try to reach into my memory and remember all 7, I probably would have gotten 2 or 3, maybe 4. But the fact is that recognition is a far easier thing to do than recall. Okay, it's far easier on our memory to be able to pull in that information if we can just simply recognize it as opposed to recall it. Okay, so that's why multiple choice questions tend to be easier than fill in the blank questions, because I'm not asking you to find the information and pull it out. I'm asking for you to recognize the information. All right. So the last bit that I'm going to talk to you guys about when we talk about memory is to do with forgetting. So why do we forget? If our brain has limitless space and can do almost anything, why do we forget things? Well, it's very simple. Okay, it's very, 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 very simple. It happens. Okay, over time we forget things. We call that decay. Now, if you put something into your long-term memory and then never do anything with it again, it will fade away. And it will get to the point where you will forget it until you see it again or you hear it again. Then it just it will come back a lot faster. Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember seeing that. But decay happens, and it typically happens in the same way. The first things to go are details. Okay, so the story will go from being very, very sharp and very, very detailed to being kind of fuzzy. Like, I kind of remember that, I think. Yeah, this is kind of what happened. So the details are the first things that go. Then you start forgetting parts of the plot, parts of the story that are meaningful, that maybe don't go anywhere that you were meaning for it to go. Okay, so maybe it starts to kind of erode some of the side plots of the story that you're telling. Okay, the last thing to go are going to be the main plot points. You're going to remember the big things that happened at until the very, very end, and we'll show you this in just a couple of minutes. Okay. You can also suffer from memory loss because of a concussion or some kind of brain injury or surgery or tumor or lots of different things. So memories can be forgotten in that way as well. You can also suffer from something called interference, where a new memory blocks an old memory from being remembered. Okay, this happens quite often when you are learning something. And you learn something that's very much similar to something else that you've learned. And so it just kind of like takes the place of it. And now you only remember the new thing. We also have something called amnesia. Now, amnesia is really, really rare. Amnesia is something that can happen 2 different ways. Typically, it only happens to people who have some kind of traumatic brain injury. But it can happen. The first type of amnesia is called retrograde amnesia. This is where you forget things in the past. Okay, so stuff that happened to you up until the event, the traumatic event, are forgotten. So you forget a chunk of time. That is retrograde amnesia. Anterograde amnesia is the inability to form new memories going forward. So instead of forgetting the past, you're unable to remember things that are happening to you into the future. So as they are happening to you, you're unable to build new memories. So both of these things are very, very troubling. One of the scariest things from my perspective is that you would forget the memories that you have made. And amnesia can take those things away. But again, those two are exceedingly rare. They really don't ever happen. Even if you've heard it, oh yeah, on my soap opera that I watch, they're always getting amnesia. That's not a thing. Okay, that's just not a thing. Okay. Far more typically, another couple of ways that you can forget is through Alzheimer's and dementia. Now, Alzheimer's is a usually age-related memory loss. And by age-related, I mean beyond just oh yeah, that happened to me a long time ago and I've forgotten some of the details. It's you simply have forgotten everything about it. It can be very, very troubling. Dementia is very similar to that, although it also tends to, dementia tends to include some severe confusion of what's going on. You kind of get really, really confused very easily. My grandmother, before she died, suffered from dementia. It made having conversations with her really, really difficult. I remember one of the last phone calls that I had with her. She kept asking me the same question over and over again because she forgot that she had asked it. And then I would tell her something, and then she would ask the question, and then I would tell her the same thing again. And she would, oh, that's so interesting. Like I had not just told her that 15 seconds before. It was, it was really sad. It was sad watching my grandmother, who had been, vibrant and, with it for her entire life, to, be, I don't want to say reduced, but, to become kind of this, shell of her former self, really, really confused as to, not necessarily who she was, but what was going on and who other people were around her. It made it really, really difficult. The one thing that I am happy that happened was that my wife got to meet her before she died. But I had to give my wife kind of a heads up of she might think you're somebody else. And if she does, I'm sorry, but she might just not realize that you're a different person. So just kind of roll with it, okay? And luckily, my grandmother realized that the person that I was bringing with me was not somebody that she had met before. And so my wife got to at least meet my grandmother before she died. We decided when my daughter was born to give my daughter my grandmother's middle name for her middle name, to kind of help us to remember the great and amazing person that she was, because she was pretty rad. She let us have popcorn for dinner one night. It's pretty rad. Anyway, not to end this on such a downer, but downer it is.